Hello and welcome to episode 154 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is July 22nd, 2019. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both from McFlugel.com. Show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/154, where you will be able to find links to LibertyMugs.com. You can buy an awesome libertarian themed mug. And also 10hoursofbitcoin.com, where if you're interested, you can collect a $2,000 bounty payable and paid in Bitcoin if you come up with a wiki for the history of the attackers of Bitcoin. So check that out. Hit me up or hit JW Otherman or at Heavily Armed C on Twitter up if you're interested in that, and we can talk to you about it if you need more details. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our episode topic.
Cool. Thanks, Rollo. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Today we're going to talk about wasting water, some fossil fuels, and some recycling, all the stuff that we're big into. So let's just get at it. What do you think about wasting water? Why do you advocate for everyone to waste water?
Yeah, well,
it's
not that I advocate for people to waste water. It's just the whole idea of wasting water is just like, it just goes to show it doesn't make sense. Like, we were kind of talking about this before we went on, and I think maybe you should talk about it since it was your little anecdote, but well, go ahead and say what you were saying, and then I'll say my little piece.
So I don't know what I was saying, but I'll tell you what I was saying before.
That when you're a little kid.
Yes, like I remember being a kid. I don't know what grade we learned. Maybe it was third grade, or I don't know how old I was. 10 years old, and you learn about the water cycle and how the water goes from the sky into rain, falls down to the earth, and then eventually it evaporates back up, and it just cycles through. And I remember learning about why we shouldn't waste water. And I think there was like a Sesame Street thing. I can actually still remember the Sesame Street little cartoon they did where the fish is outside, kid's inside brushing his teeth, and he leaves the water running. And you see the pond outside the guy's house keeps getting lower and lower, and the fish like tells him to stop or something. I can't remember exactly how it went, but I just thought it was. I always, even as a little kid, thought it was so funny that people talk about not wasting water when you can't. It just goes back into the cycle. Now, that being said, I realize they clean the water, and you also pay for it. So, if you leave the faucet running all day, you're going to get a big water bill. But I don't see how that affects the environment. Maybe I'm missing something. But Rollo, do you have something to add to that or correct me on where I was wrong?
No, I think you're right. I mean, the other thing is if someone wants to get super technical about it, it's like, if we used a ridiculous amount of water, then it might, it would have an effect on the sources of it, whether it's a river or a well or something. But I think it's just one of those things. It's kind of that the nasty influence of the government in our day-to-day life and day-to-day thinking, because the average person, libertarian or not, has it in the back of their head that, like, you shouldn't waste water. You shouldn't leave the faucet running while you're brushing your teeth, all that kind of thing. In the summer, maybe you shouldn't be watering your lawn so much because it has an effect on the water supply and everything. But I mean, if we had a market in charge of distributing water, do you think that this would ever be a concern? I know there's a lot of the water utilities are, more or less private, but I mean, I don't know how much, even just like a reservoir, I think they're pretty heavily under the control of the state in one way or the other.
Yeah, unless you're getting, I guess, water delivered to your house from like whatever Deer Park or you know those 5 gallon jugs. As far as I know, they're private
Right.
for drinking water. Yeah. They
You
also make.
mean a reservoir or like Deer Park?
Oh, Deer Park. I don't know where they
Yeah,
get
yeah,
their
yeah,
water
yeah.
from. I'm sure they have a reservoir.
Right.
I don't know what they
Or a
do.
spring or something, but
Spring, yeah. That also isn't it? I know this is like a thing libertarians talk about from time to time, but collecting your own rainwater is against the law in a lot of places, is it not?
yeah.
So there could be solutions there to supply your water from rain. I guess in areas of the country where it doesn't rain much, they would certainly have an issue with people using more water than they should because it has to get there. But that's where the market could certainly help out big time.
Right. It's the market would just, if there was a shortage of supply, the price would go up.
And that would bring more sellers into the market.
Mm-hmm. Right, because yeah, water is very important and something that we can easily take for granted. Of it, just we have a tap that you turn on and water flows out, and you don't ever have to think about it, even though it is the most important thing to life as we know it.
Yeah,
that
and Bitcoin.
That's true, and tractors
and tractors,
and so. Yeah, I mean it's I think it was Milton Friedman had the quote that said like if the government were in charge of the desert, they would have a sand shortage. Well, it's the same kind of deal. I mean, you look at California and they always have these water problems, and I think during the summer they always try to have restrictions on how much water you're using. And I think pretty sure California, other than Alaska, has the most coastline in the country.
I'd imagine.
And they have a water short. Like they have the largest ocean next to them.
Body of water right there.
And they have like all sorts of water supply problems. And it's not like, obviously you don't dip a glass
in the ocean
and drink it. But I mean, there's desalination processes. If there's enough money that's able to be put into that, then they'll find a way to supply it that way. I know I think in the Middle East somewhere, I don't know if it's Dubai, but one of the countries over there, they do desalination because they need it. I mean, it's a desert and it's fresh water isn't easy to come by. But when you have just the market able to just direct resources of where they, think they should go, then it's going to be a lot smoother. You're not going to have, you're not going to have supply restrictions. You're not going to have, wild price swings. That's the other thing is since the government, if the government's managing a lot of this stuff, then even if they didn't do supply restrictions, they would have, these, wild price fluctuations instead of having competitors come in and try to satisfy the demands of the market. So it would, if you had a monopoly doing it and they couldn't figure out a way to alleviate this problem, then you might have a wild price swing while others enter the market, but after a while it's gonna even it out. And maybe it, just like anything else, if the typical water supplies become more plentiful, then they shut the alternative ways off, just like mining or drilling for oil.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not as profitable, they shut the derricks off.
Yeah.
Just like gold mining, if the price goes down, fracking or Bitcoin mining. Once the price goes down, people shut off miners, and once the price goes up, people flip their miners back on and start going more for it. So, you want the market and all this competition in there active, so it can deal with the changes, as opposed to the state that would just, even if they're not directly, because I don't know, we're kind of shooting from the hip here without knowing who, actually, because I never really thought about it too much. No, like who actually controls that water. And someone might say, well, it's actually a lot of places have private stuff, but
they probably do.
Still very much regulated by the state. And I know look at Flint, Michigan. I mean, that was an obvious government disaster. We talk about city water at a lot of
My
places.
own
So,
water was poisoned by the government. They had to switch to a township, the next one over, to use
right.
their water supply.
Yeah. And I don't know because I have well water. So
Yeah.
don't say you don't even know where your water's coming from, because I do know where it's coming from. It's coming from a
Um,
hole in my yard, not next to my septic tank.
It's coming from the septic tank.
Yes. That, you were talking about the water cycle beforehand. Well,
Yes.
I've made mine a little bit tighter.
You privatize the water cycle.
Yep. So it works pretty good.
Yeah. So what else do we have for water and wasting it?
I don't know. Just well, we saw what happened in Flint, Michigan, when we had, the disaster with the government trying to manage their water supply, and
then you have nowhere to
awful
go.
and disgusting. But I mean, private businesses came in and supplied a bunch of water.
And had a private business been the one who was poisoning the water, well, I imagine there'd be competition there, and people could leave it and go to the next one. But when you have one centralized system, kind of stuck when it goes bad.
Yeah, and you have, I mean, people might say, well, there's, what are you going to do? Run another pipeline to everyone's houses? I don't know, but maybe it would be a little bit different, that there would be maybe multiple lines underground.
Could be
had already built. If you had competition during all of this stuff when that infrastructure is being built, you might have had a couple. Even just the construction company that's got the right of way. I don't know if it was a construction company, but whoever was the company that was responsible for installing these pipes and putting them underground, they might have put a couple lines in there just so they could be like, well, we could just lease these access to these lines. So if 2 or 3 different water companies, that we can lease the different lines to them in case something goes wrong, or they can just fire the company that's not doing a good job and have someone else do it. Right. But the thing is too, we don't have to sit here and have this foolproof plan of how the market would solve these problems, because we're just 2 guys talking off the top of our heads on a podcast. When you've got a lot of money at stake, then just like any other market,
people figure it out.
Sure.
If there's an opportunity. So yeah, one thing we know, people want and need water, clean water, to drink, to bathe, to wash their dishes, whatever. It would be supplied if someone could make money on it.
Right. Yeah, especially because there's a lot of places that you could just like dig a hole in the ground and get water.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Do you want to go to the next kind of thing?
Are fossil fuels or recycling?
Let's do recycling.
What do you want up next?
Let's do recycling.
And why you're anti-recycling?
I basically am anti-recycling. The reason that I recycle, well, let's separate it into a couple things. The reason I recycle things that I don't get paid to recycle, as in like, aluminum cans and stuff, is because it makes my my normal trash can not fill up as quickly. So basically I have 2 trash cans, instead of having 1 trash can, I have 2 trash cans, and putting plastic and paper in the one doesn't get smelly. So I don't have to, empty that one as much as the general trash. So, but otherwise it's, that's another one where it's drilled into our heads at a young age. Oh, you have to recycle. But like, why? If it's not a,
and what if, what if it takes more energy, more cost to drive that second truck around, to take it to the recycling plant, to sort it, to separate it, to get it to where it's going, that you're burning more energy than you would if you just didn't recycle?
Right. You
Is
probably
that
are.
the case? I think that might be true.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact that with like aluminum and stuff and copper and other things like that, I mean, people are willing to pay you for that
Right.
to repurpose it. Plastics and stuff, no one's willing to pay you for that. You gotta, it's they end up getting like subsidized and stuff,
Otherwise, it
and
wouldn't work. And so you're just
right,
diverting resources to an inefficient process.
right. So you're making the world, you're destroying wealth for the entire world by recycling these things that people aren't willing to pay you for. Um,
Yeah, I wish I still we were talking before we went on. I got a letter from my trash company that in an effort to keep their rates lower, there's been some changes in recycling. I guess China's not taking recycling from the United States anymore, or something like that happened. And so, it without having that other player in the market, costs of recycling are going to go up. And so the trash company asked their customers if they could be more careful with the things they're putting in the recycling. So you need it to be clean. It can't have food on it. Like, so a pizza box, if it has grease or cheese, you can't recycle it. So don't put it in recycling, put it in trash, which really narrows down the things you can recycle to begin with. And the trash company said it's really expensive to sort that stuff. And so if it's expensive, that means you're diverting resources from things that could be used in other places to do this. And so does recycling make sense at all? If it wasn't the law to do it, or would these companies even be offering it? Maybe they would for PR, but you should look into it a little bit. If you think you're saving the earth by recycling, let's take a look and see what really happens.
right. And there's articles out there that if you just like, the economics of recycling, you could do, or just like type in Mises recycling.
Yeah.
And you'll come up with some good stuff. I mean, anytime you have to rely on like just the general public to like sort out, like go into, detail and about what they can or can't recycle, and if it's got some food particles and stuff on it, then like your model is messed up. Like you don't want to rely on the non-expert to
have to do this stuff,
right? Because no one's going to do it.
Right.
Or some people might. Some people might. There's people, they've done a good enough job of convincing people that like you're an evil person if you don't, recycle the plastic bottle. That ends up, destroying the actually being worse for the environment by recycling it. So, but generally, I mean, they sent a letter out, so people weren't doing a good enough job. So,
right, and they say like we're trying to keep your rates low, so if you do it for us, that'll help keep your rate. That'll help our costs stay down.
Right. Whereas if you were selling it, someone was willing to buy it, and you came with like really dirty stuff that required some pre-processing or something, then you wouldn't be able to charge as much money for it. Like,
right.
I don't know. I haven't been to a junkyard to give them like copper or something, but I'm sure that you would be able to sell copper for more money if you have, if you stripped the rubber off a copper wire than if you didn't.
Yeah, I used to work for a plumber. We used to take all the scraps to the scrap yard.
Mm-hmm.
And we just brought it there for him. All the fittings, all the piping, and the old water heaters, all that he would buy. Cast iron tubs he would pay for, which helps keep the cost down for the plumber.
Sure.
And I don't know what they do with it. I don't know where they sell it. I'm assuming he sells it to someone. I don't know what they do with it at the scrapyard.
Well, I mean, it's probably like copper. We know that like it's cheaper to recycle copper that's already, used than to go out and mine it a little bit.
Right.
So there's an an obvious economic benefit there, whereas opposed to, like plastics, it's probably cheaper just to make a brand new plastic bottle than it is to try to take the existing one, break it down, and do all that processing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
If it weren't, then they would be paying you for it
Right.
because they want that raw material.
Which maybe, I mean, theoretically, someday that could be the case. It's not.
Sure, and it would be a great day if we can get to that point because we'll be wealthier because we can use the petroleum products for something other than plastics, and
Right.
it just lowers the cost of it. So what you're saying is that you want just landfill. You're okay with landfills? Yeah, I'll answer my own question. Yeah, I don't have a problem with landfills. And again, when they're privately owned, then you can manage the space, manage the cost of manage the cost of putting your trash in a landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Grum is like trying to pull my neck or something. But yeah, I mean, landfills they use it. This stuff decomposes over time, and I think in Europe, a lot of places they have like methane plants because the
Wasn't there a
decomposition.
guy on Tom Woods who had those flies?
Oh yeah, they're like the flies like eat the trash, and
yeah,
I forget if he was trying to make food with them.
Yeah, it was something he was doing.
Which is like,
kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, if you're willing to eat flies for food, I'd rather eat the real.
I forget what they were doing with it, but they were
meat.
eating the trash and maybe getting energy or food, or I don't know what it was. Get what they were getting out of it.
Or the other thing you do is just burn the trash.
Yeah, and then destroy and increase global warming.
Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, we have incinerators for stuff, and you can create power and energy off doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Heat a boiler, spin a turbine, create electricity.
There you go.
Nothing wrong with that. So there's many ways to deal with trash.
Block them on Twitter.
Yeah, it's the best way to deal with trash. But this whole like campaign to you are an evil person if you don't recycle. Well, let's make it so that you're a stupid person if you don't recycle because you're like literally throwing away money.
Throwing away dollars.
Right.
Which that would get people to do it. I mean, people steal copper all the time.
I separate my aluminum cans from the other stuff. I'm not going to dump my aluminum cans in the normal recycle bin because I can make money off that. And it's not much. It's a little bit, but hey, it's more than nothing.
More than nothing.
I haven't. When I got my air conditioner replaced, I still have to sort through all that stuff. I had them leave it at my house so I can, dump the plastic, get rid of the real junk that isn't worth anything. But I want to take all that copper,
right,
and bring it to a junkyard and get some money from that. And then the other, maybe there's some aluminum there too, and then the other stuff. Because that's what they do. I mean, they send trash to places, and they don't just.
Well, that's why, like I said, I worked for the plumber, and we would put in a new bathroom. We'd take out the old tub, and of course, you say, "Yeah, we'll remove it for free," but we get paid for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's like a lot of these junk collection companies that they can charge a little bit because they're able to make money on the stuff they're taking from you.
Yeah, I bet you get a new water heater, they'll be happy to take your old one away from you, which most people think that's great because not everyone has a truck to put the heater in. It's heavy. You got to move it and take it to some scrapyard that maybe you've never been to, whereas the companies who remove them have a relationship there and a deal and an agreement set up where they just bring the stuff over. So they're happy to remove it for free, and the homeowner's usually happy that they took it for free.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've gotten rid of stuff for free at my house. It had some value, but I just, wanted it gone.
And
so it's, you get, oh, maybe I could put it on eBay and get, $20. It was like, I remember I put a basketball hoop up on nextdoor.com. It was there when I bought the house, and I don't play basketball.
You retired from basketball?
Yeah. Um,
Quite a player back in your day.
yeah, I am actually the worst basketball player in the world. Um, you
That
could
might
probably.
that might be true.
I've had people challenge me and say, "No, no, 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 I'm the worst." I'm like,
I may
I'm
beat you.
probably. I don't know. I haven't had anyone actually. We haven't had
You got to do like a skills
did the
competition.
one-on-one game and
One
see
on
what
one's
happened.
tough, yeah, but
It
you
would
do
be a
like a
0-0
3-point
game.
shooting. Yeah, even just take layups.
I would probably double dribble every time.
Yeah, good
I
chance of
I
it.
am really really bad. None of my other. Well, I guess the only other sport I can take claim anything in is baseball, and I don't really think there's any transferable skills from baseball to basketball, or at least none that I have, because it doesn't for me. I'm really bad at basketball,
But
but
it's hey, it is entertaining to watch. If
it
you
would
do
be.
find Rollo, I've seen it before. Roll a basketball out, tell him to dribble and shoot, and just sit back and watch.
Yeah, so if there's anyone in the Philadelphia area that who's also thinks they're the worst basketball player in the world, I will challenge you. We will have a game. We will have a match, and we'll have someone record it, and we'll
We're,
see who the worst basketball player really
we're
is.
gonna do a one-on-one game. We'll do a free throw shooting competition, maybe 3-pointers and layups for that matter. But we'll finish with layups if the other ones go as well as I think
Okay.
they will.
Yeah, and all these things will have to be timed because
Yes, we could even have a dribbling competition.
uh,
Anyway, fossil fuels.
yeah, let's do that.
You are in favor of destroying the environment with fossil fuels?
Yes, I am.
Hmm.
Are you?
Expand on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, throughout the and actually, Saifedean Ammous, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, has done a really good job explaining this, and because it goes back to Bitcoin uses a lot of energy to secure the network, and there's been these arguments made by people saying, "Oh, it's actually Bitcoin's not good because it's bad for the environment because of all the
Look at
electricity
all
that
the
it uses."
electricity that's going
Right.
into the network. Yeah.
But if you look at our energy usage as humans over history, as we've improved our lots in lives, our lots in life, we're using more energy as we do it. It's like the look at cars versus the horse and buggy. We use way more energy to power cars.
They're going to say like cars versus birds.
Yeah, yeah. We use way more energy using cars versus when we use birds to do anything. I guess too. But we, is are people going to say, "Oh, we should go back to horses? Horses would be better for us because they use less energy." I mean, that's absolute insanity. Refrigeration's another one. We use way more energy to be able to refrigerate and freeze food than we did before. But are people going to say, "No, actually, you should dig a hole in your basement and store your food that way. That would be better for us." So I think it is better for humanity that we use more and more energy. And while fossil fuels remain the most economic way for us to, create and use energy, that's what we should be using. I know people have all these grand ideas for renewable energy and solar power and wind power and ocean power and everything, but you know what? There's not a good way to have that energy be used consistently to have like good storage.
Mm-hmm.
But a gallon of gasoline is a great way to store energy.
Mm-hmm.
And until someone can come up with a better way of doing that, then keep using the fossil fuels and everything.
Right.
We have nuclear energy as a good source, but for some reason people like to poo poo all over that. So like you look at the Green New Deal and all these green energy proposals, and they always leave out nuclear energy somehow.
Interesting.
Yeah, somehow something that's like actually really clean.
And efficient.
Yeah, it's really really great. Now people say, "Well, what about nuclear accidents?" It's like, yeah, I mean that can happen, but we're pretty good at dealing with those issues and disposal and everything. So it's yes, you know that Chernobyl series just came out, and it shows
Mm-hmm.
how disaster could be. Fukushima didn't happen that long ago, but these are like real bad mistakes that happen, not like,
Well, the
oh,
thing
the
with Chernobyl
technology.
was a design issue, and I'm not going to pretend to know nuclear energy, but something with the control rods had something on it, and so they were doing a test. I can't explain it. I don't know. I don't know nuclear energy, but it it was a flaw in the design, and all the nuclear power plants in the Soviet Union had the same design, and that was part of the reason the Soviet Union didn't want to admit to it, because Soviet Union couldn't show weakness,
Right.
but they had to admit that they designed this poorly and had to change them all, which they did. But so that's not what happened at Chernobyl. Isn't ever going to happen again, at least the same way.
Well,
It
yeah.
can't
I mean,
happen.
you look at the Soviet Union, and look at that one car that you could buy in the Soviet Union, and compare it to like the U.S., where there was a pretty good amount of market freedom compared to the Soviet Union for producing cars. And then you're going to say, like, oh, what do we expect to have happen when those people also try to produce nuclear energy?
Yeah,
Like, it's a disaster waiting to happen, because guess what? Communism's a real bad way to organize an economy and develop technology, especially as the money gets used up that was initially expropriated.
right.
So they don't have the wealth that they had when they first got started. But no, I mean, so as long as the market's producing the energy, I think nuclear is a good option. There's and again, I mean, we're saying this not necessarily acknowledging the paradigm that we live in with the government messing things up. If you had an actual free market for this kind of stuff, it would be on the business, the nuclear energy company, to deal with the spent energy, or the spent rods,
Right.
to safely do it. And I think they do a pretty good job with it now. And I know that what's it, the Yucca Mountains or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know there's issues there, but again, that's the government has their hands all over that.
Correct.
So it's tough to say that it's the market wouldn't have a better way to deal with this kind of stuff, because they got to deal with they would have to deal with any sort of negative externalities that happen from it. They would be subject to being sued by the people that they affect negatively. So it would be in their interest to make sure that they're dealing with this stuff well, just like every other business has to do. So, I know, again, we're kind of shooting from the hip here with this kind of stuff, and saying that we don't really know how this stuff works, because neither of us are, in the nuclear energy
You're a
field,
physicist. I have no clue.
but we know how markets work.
Right, and we know there's people who understand this stuff.
Right. So there would be good ways to deal with this stuff. But another thing I want to talk about with energy, and we were kind of talking about this before we went on, about these renewable energy sources that are really expensive, and usually energy negative,
Mm-hmm.
and cost more than they produce, which, by the way, destroys wealth, makes the world a worse place to live as opposed to a better place. The stuff that you hear these projects, they go to these third world countries, and they give them this village somewhere in Africa, this solar panel that runs this solar generator that's supposed to provide these people with power and electricity, and they often don't work. And so these people end up, impoverished even more, or just not helped out at all. But these people pat themselves on the back for saying, "Oh, look what we're doing. We're bringing, green energy to these people, and helping them get electricity." But it's like, all you're doing is using these people as guinea pigs. And that's just like vile and just disgusting thing to do. That you see these people and you're like, well, we had this technology that, you know,
we don't want to test on ourselves.
Right. So we're going to send it to these people that, you know, are just like these really poor people that, and we can get away with it and just say like, oh, we were just trying to help. And if it didn't work, oh, oops. As opposed to if you really wanted to help these people out, you would give them a gasoline generator with a big gas tank, and that they could, you know, a truck could get to every once in a while to fill, to resupply them with. But again, unfortunately, a lot of people don't even understand what they're doing, so they have this cover of trying to help. But it's, if you think about it, it's really, really disgusting to go out to these places and just experiment on them.
Agreed.
So what do you have to say about
I was gonna do my Ben Shapiro quote.
Okay. Ugh.
I know. But
not endorsed. Actually, I do like this quote.
Yeah, well, Rollo was the one who told me to listen to Ben Shapiro. So
no, that's a lie.
That's why I listen. That's why I know this quote.
I was never into Ben Shapiro, just for the record.
Well,
even though there was a point.
You say that now while we're recording. But Ben Shapiro was talking. I don't even know what this was, probably in response to something AOC said or something. I don't know. Talking about the global warming and how it's, you know, going to kill us all in the next, what did she say, 12 years or something?
Yeah, I think every time she does that,
said,
it's always 12 years.
Yeah, it's always 12 years from whenever she says it. Al Gore, back in like when he was running for president, said it was 10. We were 10 years away. So there's always something, and the world's always ending, and it's always from global warming. And Ben Shapiro brought up a good point. If you're serious about this, if global warming is and fossil fuels are what's going to kill all of humanity and the planet, well, one, the United States isn't polluting as much as India and China, and they're using fossil fuels. So if you're serious about it, let's call up India and China, give them a heads up so we can get all the people out of there, and then bomb their coal plants, because they're the ones who are polluting the earth that's going to heat up and burn us all alive. Let's get rid of them. I mean, this is an emergency. We have to take care of it. Yet no one would be in favor. Everyone, no single person, your biggest global warming fan, would not be in favor of that. And I like that point. I mean, actually, you never know. Maybe he was serious, but I don't think he was serious.
Hopefully, John Bolton didn't listen to that.
Yeah, she may have, but I don't think he was serious. I actually am pretty sure he wasn't serious. But I like that way of thinking. Like, okay, if this is what you're saying, that coal is going to kill us all, then let's go after the people who make coal and take out their coal plants. Because the United States isn't the big polluter with coal. It's all these developing nations who get cheap, efficient energy out of it.
Yeah.
Which they need to live, that's why they're developing and coming out of poverty, because they have this energy. So if you took out their coal plants, many of them would starve. But, you know, we'd save the planet. So.
Yeah.
And that's why they're not serious, because no one's proposing that.
Right. And while we're kind of on the topic of global warming and everything, someone might say, well, you're talking about all this using up fossil fuels and more energy, but you have to deal with the consequences of that. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, let me just say this. Throughout the entire history of humanity, the weather has not been our friend. The climate has not been our friend.
For as long as people have existed.
There are very few places in the world where you can just like be out in the ambient weather for most of the time. We're always seeking shelter. We're always trying to condition our air. I just know around here, Slappy and I, you know, it's been like 95 degrees out the last 5 days, and
it feels like 140.
Yeah, 1,000% humidity. So it hasn't exactly been pleasant for most people. And then in the winters around here, it gets really cold, and you want to have your heat on your house, much like in the summer you have your air conditioner on. So we do throughout all of human history, well, we know, like, what's the first thing you do if you're, get lost somewhere? It's like seek shelter. You need to get out of the weather. Maybe start a fire. You want some heat and everything else. So this idea that, like, the climate is our friend, just like isn't true at all. It's the opposite. It's been an enemy of people. Now we can go outside and enjoy the weather, but as soon as it gets a little bit uncomfortable, we're running into air conditioner or running out of the rain or the snow or anything else that's an issue. But that's still said. It doesn't mean that what happens if our use of fossil fuels is causing the earth to heat up a little bit. Well, there would have to reach a point where the money we would have to spend to deal with the changes and trying to get out of that would end up costing us so much that it wouldn't make sense to keep using that energy that way.
Right.
Again, there would be market incentives to change your behavior. All that said, I still don't think that it's really that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, and that really has a
care for humanity.
Right. Yeah, I'm no expert in that, but I know that the all these climate scientists, I understand it enough to know that they're not. The 98% of scientists agree on global warming. I know that that's just absolute
Not
bunk.
true.
Yeah, and that a lot of them say, like, yeah, it might be changing, but it may not be bad. Right. It may not be good or bad, or it may be good. So again, especially when the government's leading the charge, I think you should really have a
skeptical eye.
Yeah, because what they're doing by saying is we should stop using energy is that we should hit the brakes on the progress of humanity, hit the brakes on the improvement of people's lots in life, hit the brakes on development of wealth. So, keep using up energy. I think it's good for you.
Burn it up.
And also, I mean, if we're saying that humans shouldn't use as much energy, all right, well, what are you going to do to not use as much? And some people do that, and more power to them. Although I think some people, like, using an electric car, unless you're getting solar panels or something to power it up, you're probably using a conventional power source to.
Right. And also, isn't there something with the batteries there about how much it costs to, and how much there's nickel or something in the batteries?
Well, I mean,
is that old?
Traditionally, like a hybrid cars and stuff, they use nickel metal hydride batteries, and nickel is, a nickel mine has a very large impact on the environment around it. Like, it destroys a lot of life around it. And then also, just like, if you look at life cycles, that a Prius is worse for the environment than a Hummer, with the way that it gets driven, the parts that it uses, the construction of it. That you can't just look at the what the MPG is on the car to determine if it's better or worse for the environment or not. That's like a very stupid way of determining something like that, because you're only looking at it one part of a much bigger issue going on, or much bigger stuff going on. You should, be a little bit more aware of these things if you're making a judgment. But hey, if it's sad, if it makes you feel good about yourself because you're driving an electric car, I mean, okay. Whatever. I don't like that they're heavily subsidized, but that it is what it is. I mean, let's even if they weren't subsidized and you wanted to spend $80,000 on an electric car, again, I would never do that, but knock your socks off.
It's like the South Park episode.
Yeah. Yeah, end up having a smug problem in your city.
Yes. You go to parties and ask for an empty wine glass so you could fart in it and smell it.
That's what it feels like a lot of times.
Yeah. So you got anything else to add on why you hate the environment, why you hate poor people in third world countries, and what else do you hate?
Recycling.
Recycling. You hate fish. Yeah, you hate all kinds of stuff. You don't want to.
Yeah, well, we gotta
protect the
wait.
fish.
We're gonna wait till we talk about why I apparently hate gardening so much.
Ooh, good one.
But that's for another
It's
episode.
for another day. We could have put that on the list.
Yeah, well, we have a guest we want to have on for that,
Okay.
and I want to really like kind of maybe even prepare a little bit for that because I've got a lot of stuff to say about
Some
that.
things to get off your chest.
Yeah,
Down with the gardeners.
absolutely. That's my little my garden I have that I talk about. That's my little status indulgence.
Well, you got a free market story?
We all have one. I kind of do, but I think you had a better one.
I don't remember what it was. Can you remind me?
I don't remember either.
It wasn't diapers again.
No, it wasn't diapers. Oh no, yours wasn't a free market success story. You just
Mine was a market failure.
apparently with the heavy bag.
Oh yeah,
Not a success yet.
Really a success.
It's not a success yet.
No, because I haven't put it up yet.
Yeah. So I do have a market success story. I had a little bit of an issue. It's not that I'm getting some like warning lamps going on in my car.
Oh right.
And so and the car was kind of running weird. Couldn't figure out what was going on my own. So I just like Googled the problem and people on message boards were talking about it. And I figured out what the issue was or what I suspect what I suspect the issue was. And then went on Googled again to figure out how to repair it, what parts to buy, how to do it quickly, and it ended up being made my life a lot easier and quicker. Instead of sending it to a shop to deal with, I could use up a little bit of my time, but spend a lot less money and make the repair. So it was also really easy. I could just go on Amazon and they have your little garage where you put what car you have in there. So anytime you look up car parts, it automatically tells you if the part's going to fit your car or not. So it made it nice and easy. Bought the parts, came in, and put them in. And
Cool.
then, I don't know if it fixed it or not because I was kind of in a rush. I was putting it in tonight, and then I ran in to do this podcast.
So we're not sure if it's a free market success story or not.
Right. So maybe we'll have to wait until I don't know if I'm going to even turn the car on tonight. I might just wait till I driving to work tomorrow.
Okay.
It's not anything that prevents the car from driving. It's the anti-lock brakes has an issue. So we'll see. Well, you'll all be on pins and needles when we come back and talk about the result.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my market story. So again, the show notes page for this episode is mcflugel.com/154. It's all about libertymugs.com. It's kind of late. I'm probably not going to throw up any links because I just want to get this episode out pretty quickly.
Sure.
But again, just use the free market tool of Google. Just whatever the issue is that you want to know about the government messing it up and making the world worse, whether it's fossil fuels or water or recycling, and just type in when Google's Mises and then whatever the topic is. I say that because it'll send you to Mises.org, to the Mises Institute website.
So they write about everything.
Yep. They've got a lot of good stuff there. So it's that's my link. Maybe I'll just I won't do that. Send a link, put up a link that is just Googling Mises.
Maybe you should.
Maybe make it a little bit easier for you. If I were better at programming, I would put a little box in there. What's your topic you want to do? And then it would just automatically send them to that topic plus Mises in the Google search.
Perfect.
Yep. So, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Nothing.
All right. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week, and be on the lookout for. We did part 1 of the PCP conspiracy trial that Slappy was on last week. So, be on the lookout. Not sure when we're going to do it, but part 2 is going to be out there. So
it will be.
Part 2 will be good.
Should be.
Yep. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Peace.